Live from the Mandalay Bay Convention Center in Las Vegas, it's theCUBE, covering VMworld 2016. Brought to you by VMware and its ecosystem sponsors.
Well, welcome back inside Mandalay Bay as we continue our coverage of VMworld here on theCUBE, along with Peter Burris. I'm John Walls, and now joined by David Convery, who's the Solutions Architect at CDW, and Lee Caswell, Vice President of Product Storage for the VMware Storage and Availability Business Unit. Gentlemen, thanks for being here. Good to see you.
Great to be here.
How's the show doing so far for you?
Oh, it's on fire, man. We have a tiger by the tail here. It's been great.
Don't let go.
Don't let go.
Don't let go. Don't let go. All right, Dave, you've been doing this for a long time, and we were just talking about your history and your background. You said, yeah, I first got into virtualization back at Y2K.
Yeah.
Wow, I remember that.
Y2K, yeah.
I mean, how far we've come, huh?
Whew. Man, yeah. I did it. I used it for Y2K testing. And then from there, I worked for a disaster recovery services company, and we had these customers, Katrina, Rita, and 9/11. They just came in with their stuff, and they didn't have enough physical servers to in their contract to recover their businesses. And they were taking out VMware evaluation licenses to get their businesses up and running. And VMware was super supportive of that, and they knew, the licenses would come. And wow, yeah, it was like thrust into ESXi or ESX at the time.
Right.
Just
it's interesting,
crazy.
And as we think about what's happening on hyperconverged now, right? It's the same idea, right? I mean, it was actually practicality, the necessity, right, of using VMware because, gosh, I needed to do it for kind of TCO reasons. And what happened was ESXi started out at the fringe almost, right, and then came roaring into the into the core as people realize, hey, I really can run like mission critical applications, business critical apps. The same trajectory is happening now with vSAN, HCI, right, and our vSAN Ready nodes. We're starting off like outside. We started off VDI, test and dev, right? All the
we were talking
management clusters, right? But now it's happening in the majority of applications, mainstream business apps, right?
Yeah. I firmly 1,000% believe any application can run on vSAN. As we were talking about this, I still have customers, they talk about running Exchange or SQL on physical servers, and I'm like, why? Mm-hmm. So now you take all those benefits of virtualization, and you add vSAN on top of it, and make everything totally portable on just, commodity-based hardware. And pretty soon our job as storage architects, figuring out SANs and RAID groups, and, how big my LUN is supposed to be, who cares? Throw some storage in the server, add them as you need, and keep going.
Well, to that point, Lee, you were talking before we went on the air here about how people, professionals coming to you saying, I want to get my attention from here to up here, all right? I want to be able to look at business and not worry so much about what's going on behind the scenes in the back office.
It was interesting, I was even at CDW recently, right? We were talking about how long it takes to train someone on enterprise storage versus, the less you know about storage, the more a hyperconverged system works the way you expect. I add a node, of course it gets bigger, right? I mean, why wouldn't it?
Right.
So the idea that you can get people trained up, not just using the product, but actually selling the product, I mean, it's actually a very interesting dynamic. One of the other interesting things we're seeing right now is just the overlap of flash, right? All flash, right? Which first, came blazing onto the scene for performance, right, for an application, is now coming in because customers want to spend less time actually, it's that looking down. I don't want to look down anymore, right? And so the idea that the customer SAT numbers for all flash users is just off the charts because the risk of misconfiguring something actually is really low, right? I mean, you don't spend nearly as much time and you don't worry about it.
Right. So you have the performance you need, you have the space you need, you get the deduplication and it just, as you need more performance, you need more space, add another node. And on top of that, you get compute memory and everything else. So
there still are some challenges associated with application and selecting the technology. And there's a lot of transformation and transition. There's a lot of new technologies coming online.
That's right.
Even in the storage world. So how is virtualization helping customers or helping protect customers from making bad choices with current products?
Yeah, one thing you want to look at is like, where do I manage this from, right? How many silos do I have, right? And so the extent that you can leverage vCenter, for example, right, as a common management domain, not just for storage, by the way, right? Well, you started off with compute, right? You get storage, but you also have networking, right? So what we have today with NSX, right, integrating that together. We've heard what we announced at the show here today, is this VMware Cloud Foundation. great way to go and integrate, right, all the rich features, functionality, and now you've got it in one user interface, right? That simplifies the deployment and then the support, right?
Making everything easy. So, putting everything together, plug it in, run a wizard. Everything's set up for you, and it's set up the way it should be.
Yeah.
So it's not as dependent upon the underlying type or choice that you made about the storage. It's now more, what does the application need, and let's just point the application at the pool.
Yeah, so I still see, there's going to be those needs where that super low latency, super fast
I agree with that.
shared storage is going to be critical and is going to be needed for specific applications. But all that other stuff, all that normal day-to-day web servers, applications, email, file shares, all that stuff, you can just throw it on there and it works. You don't have to worry about all the silos and all the different management people that you need.
So going back to John's question, based on your point, Lee,
Sure.
the idea that getting people to raise up their perspectives. Dave, how much time are you now saving, not doing the physical stuff, to actually starting to talk to developers, the people that are taking all of this data, all of these assets, and turning it into business value? Are you able to spend more time and directly supporting them as you go into customers and design these capabilities?
It does seem like that shadow IT or DevOps or the people that aren't depending or depend on IT, the consumer, is becoming more of the decision maker, or at least the influencer. And what vSAN brings to the table for those kind of people, especially with the automation and the whole private cloud piece of it, it takes down that, I call it the IT stop sign. Okay, so why is DevOps going to the public cloud? Because it's easy. So you have to be as easy as wherever they're going in order to bring them back and keep that governance on your data and keep your IP where it belongs, whether it's in that private cloud or off into a more secure public cloud or through a hybrid cloud or whatever. vSAN kind of keeps everything contained for that. So.
Yeah, and I think there seems to be a trend, or at least a thread here that I'm hearing a different conversation here about simplicity, right?
Simplicity.
It's just about keeping things simple for people and letting them focus on their core competencies and what they're paid to do, and not distract them away from having to learn. Like you said, you get up to speed in 15 minutes as opposed to hours or weeks of training.
3 clicks, you have a vSAN. Is it 3 clicks?
Yeah,
3 clicks, you have a vSAN. Yeah.
I ask customers pretty routinely now, is your budget going to be, is it higher or lower this year? The answer is it's lower, right?
Yeah, it's always lower.
Right? And you're like, do you have more people or less people? And they're like, well, less people. They're shrinking data centers, right? And all of a sudden, and then you say, well, and how many projects do you have? Like every project now has an IT component, right? So now it's the pace of change, right? And so if you don't have to worry about the underlying infrastructure as much, now all of a sudden it just becomes easier to start worrying about, hey, how do I go and scale? We had a customer this morning I was talking to, right, that was talking about, well, the other thing it does is it gives me the opportunity to have kind of bite-sized chunks, right? So the risk of making the wrong decision is actually low, right? I buy a set of servers in, as opposed to, I buy something that's this big where I have to basically predict what's going to happen for the next 5 years. This looks more like, hey, you know what? I kind of have to know what's going to happen over the next 6 months, and then we'll figure it out from there. That's today's mentality.
So easier to change one piece instead of the whole puzzle.
Exactly.
Yeah, right? I don't pay the price for that.
That's a great point. There's not that many IT shops that are refreshing their entire data center. There are, but there's not that many. Usually it's a silo. So, but there's always projects, VDI, some sort of new SAP application, or, we're migrating to a new version of Exchange, or whatever it is. Say, okay, let's start there and let's just slip it in, try it out. You'll see you like it. It's like, it's like crack. Everybody needs more, right? So
crack. Wait, we're lawyers. Yeah,
we're lawyers.
I don't know if I can get away with that one, but
slip it in, try it out, and you'll see you like it. And then from there, it'll just roll. And as the old siloed equipment starts to age out, they'll just easily transition it into vSAN.
That's one thing we just did a
vMotion
survey.
it over, add a new server, shut that down.
We just finished a survey of 250 vSAN customers, and one of the things that we were watching is, so what about the applications, right? Because when we started, like, it was, hey, I'm going to try this in test dev. I'll try it over here, or DR is a good one, right? I try it, and it's not. I'm not running like my real stuff on it, right? Now what we're finding is this year it's switched. Right, so we flipped into the majority are now business critical applications, right? They're running SQL, Exchange, SharePoint, the whole Microsoft stack. They're running Oracle databases, right? They're running Percona, right? I mean, they're MySQL variants, right? It's really interesting. And so all of a sudden they're like, there's no real hesitation, right? And it's the economics that drive this, right? Once you start looking and saying, here's how I can go and do this in more bite-sized chunks, it starts to become more, it's more cloud-like, I think, from that standpoint.
But it's also the risk because, as you said, you make a design decision today, it's not going to be the right design decision in 18 months. You make a product decision today, it's probably not going to be the right product decision in 18 months. You make the right, you want to, your company decides to buy a new company or wants to divest itself. You don't want the infrastructure getting in the way of those business decisions. So it's certainly the economics, but it's a lot of it has to do with the fact that, as you said, the pace of change is so great that the only way to ensure that you can keep up is to focus on where the change really needs to be and diminish the focus on where the change isn't as required. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And one of the things that, degrees of freedom that customers also want is we're finding, they're pretty used to being able to configure servers and choose their own server. Right? So the idea that we give choice, right? Running software on a server where you get to choose, right? I mean, we have 15 different partners, right? Server partners building something called a vSAN ready node, right? So you can take our software pre-configured, right, to strip out the integration risk, if you will. Now, there's also some customers who just want like the simplest, easiest, fully integrated. We're working with EMC. The VX Rail product is an integrated. CDW offers both of these, right? So, for customers who want just to say, I want a single point of support, integrated backup, I mean, that's a world-class product, right? As an integrated appliance, that's one way to buy, right? One way to deploy. But on the other hand, if I'm a UCS shop, I can go and say, hey, here's how I get a UCS. If I'm an HPE shop, here's how I do that. Lenovo, right? It all works, all pre-configured.
Or Dell.
Oh, they're Dell. Of course, right.
I've heard of those guys,
yeah. Thank you for that, by the way. So
no sweat.
I may be back,
Happy to be here. The value out of the cube.
Right, there we go, exactly, yeah. Good career advice.
So, flash before your eyes there for a
That's all good.
Right.
But this choice, right, I mean, it's interesting because certainly customers are looking at, like, what level of choice and flexibility do they want? And this server choice, right, is a big one.
Yeah. There's the reason why people buy servers isn't because it's a specific brand. I mean, if you open up servers and you look inside, it's Intel processors or maybe an AMD processor, a bunch of RAM and some disks. The software that the vendors offer to manage those are what's important. And it's funny, since vCenter, even before it was vCenter, just I guess 2.0 was it? Being able to integrate the management of the servers into vCenter and having all those sensors and all that stuff kind of bubble up into vCenter is huge. And being able to hook in and take like vRealize automation or vRealize orchestrator and make it deploy the physical hardware as well as the virtual, it's big. Tie that in with vSAN, it just kind of makes it easy.
So Dave, you're working with a lot of customers every single day.
Yep.
They are also starting to deploy cloud, or at least procure cloud, as part of their core strategy. Talk a little bit about the challenges associated with inter-cloud communication and the role that virtualization plays there.
Yeah. So it's still kind of the wild west out there with that. I know VMware with NSX trying to, and now with the new announcements, and I haven't fully digested all this stuff from yesterday.
None of us have.
Just the idea of providing that kind of peanut butter of policy, for security and networking and all that from, whatever you need to keep.
By the way, that's a technical term.
I like that.
Butter of policy.
I like that a lot.
I have more. Peanut butter of policy. In your private cloud and being able to kind of spark that up in whatever public cloud you choose to use kind of brings that core, so VMware's message was always whatever hardware you have your choice. Now it's whatever cloud you have your choice.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense. and yeah, security and the networking is the biggest piece of it. And that, if you look at the NIST official version of hybrid cloud, it's being able to move things back and forth seamlessly, and that's what it brings to the table.
That's a big part of this cross-cloud message, right? I mean, there's an obligation, and it turns out, I'd argue that your most strategic engagement with the cloud is actually data. Right, VMs you can spin up, spin down, right? They're transitory, it's on and off. But the decision about where you place data is long-standing.
And what data?
And what data? Sovereignty issues about it takes data's not quick to move anywhere, right? So it takes time, and it takes from a cost standpoint, right? You all of a sudden lock yourself in on data to keeping it going, right? So those sort of issues. And if you want to take it back, by the way, there's some egress fees and other things to go and manage. So what we announced right in this cross-cloud world about how we're running, for example, in IBM SoftLayer, right? And you can now spin up vSAN in SoftLayer, right? And see the same policy-based management, right, across the cloud now, right? I mean, that extension, right, into the public clouds, right, is a really interesting way for us to go and talk about, moving from just a storage, provider into a data services, data management, right? That becomes a key element going forward.
How do you convince people to be early adopters then of that? Because now that they're making decisions that, not that they all matter, but
sure,
those matter maybe a little more.
Is it really early adoption, though, this far into the game? I mean,
well, I meant, and when you're talking about a transitory element, you're thinking, okay, I want you to take another step.
Yeah,
I want you to go a little further out, and so that's what I was saying.
Well, here's where let me add a little bit to that.
Sure.
Here's what I'd say is that you said data management.
Yes.
I would say data asset management.
That's fair. Yeah.
That's a good term.
We were talking earlier. Digital business is about how you're going to apply data differentially to retain and sustain your customers. And so this whole notion of data as an asset really elevates this conversation about what data, where, when, who, all those other things. And to the degree that virtualization simplifies those conversations, it's going to have a major impact on business flexibility, agility, even design.
That's right.
You guys agree?
Totally agree, yeah.
So think about that, and I have to credit VMware SE, his name is Paul Irwin. Think of NSX as kind of a bodyguard, okay? And every chunk of data, whatever it is, has a bodyguard kind of leading the way and protecting that piece of data from whatever it is that it needs to be protected, wherever it goes. And that's really a real simple analogy of it. So it's not just, I have to configure a firewall over here and make sure that if it goes into the cloud, that firewall has the same rules. It doesn't matter anymore because my bodyguard's gone with me, and that bodyguard is making sure that all the policies are applied no matter where I am.
It also opens up new areas, when you talk about data asset management. Now I started thinking about, maybe I want to do some big data analytics on where my data is, right? Where do I locate it, right? And you could locate it at different places for sovereignty, security, local performance, for example, right? Backup, any geolocation issues, right? And then I also started thinking of a policy-based, right? We call it storage policy-based management. And that storage, now it says, it's not just capacity, right? I maybe want to be thinking about performance, right? How do I think about allocating performance? How do I think about managing performance across different assets, for example, right? So, this is what's exciting, I think, is once you start where we've started from, which is at the hypervisor level, you're at a natural architectural injection point to go and say, we could take all of these pieces in and very efficiently go and manage them, provide new functionality, right? That's a really interesting way as customers trying to assess, like, my data may not just be here anymore, right? Maybe out here, maybe out there. How do I go and get a handle on that?
That's true once you hit that inflection point when the industry starts coming to you.
Right, that's right.
VMware has clearly hit that point and then some.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, we've had peanut butter policy. We've had bodyguards. I wish we had more time to hear more pearls of wisdom, Dave.
Don't forget the big IT stop sign.
I like that, too. Very good. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Yes,
thank you, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a great show.
All right.
Our coverage on theCUBE VMworld continues in just a moment here from Las Vegas.